Alright guys, here's the last way that we're going to solve a quadratic. It's going to be by the quadratic formula. What's nice about the quadratic formula is it can be used on any quadratic equation. There's no really restrictions when you can use it, so that's always nice. Alright, let's refresh what we did yesterday real quick because we're going to use it today. We're going to use the discriminant, which is b squared minus 4ac. And remember, that told us the types of solutions it had. If it was a positive number, it was 2 real solutions. If it was a negative number, it was no real solutions. If it was 0, it just had 1 real solution. Remember, you can always look back at those notes. The videos are on Schoology if you need them. Okay guys, here is the quadratic formula. It's opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac, all of that over 2a. If you notice, there is the discriminant right there, okay? And now that kind of makes sense why it was a negative. We had no real solutions, because if you ever try to do the square root of a negative number, the calculator is going to come back at you and say error. So that's why. But before we do that, here's some steps. Really the big thing for quadratic formula is you got to move everything over to one side to equal it to 0. So it should look like ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. Okay, here's our steps. So if you ever need to look back at them or you're stuck, you can look back and say, okay, have I done this yet? And kind of go through that checklist. Alright guys, here's our first example. If you look, it's equal to 0, so I don't have to move anything over. I can go ahead and do like we did yesterday and find my A, my B, and my C. Okay, now be careful with the signs. I have a positive 2, this one was a positive 11, and my C was a positive 5. Okay. Now we're going to do what we did yesterday and find our discriminant. So, remember, discriminant was b squared minus 4ac. Okay. Now let's plug in our numbers. So I have 11 squared, and I'm going to go put that 11 in parentheses, minus 4 times our 2, which was our A, and our C, which was 5. All right, now we can plug that in directly into our calculator, exactly what as we see, in parentheses 11, then square it, minus 4, in parentheses 2, in parentheses 5. If you do that in your calculator, you get 81. Okay, now remember, our formula for quadratic formula is x equals opposite of b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Okay. Now if you look, we already did the discriminant. We already did this part right here. So we can just plug our number in. That's why I do the discriminant first. So I can go ahead and get opposite of b, so negative 11 plus or minus the square root of 81. I'm just going to plug that discriminant right in there. Okay. All over 2 times my a, which was 2. All right, let's clean this up a little bit. So negative 11 plus or minus square root of 81 is 9. All over 2 times 2, which is 4. Now, if you notice the top, we can combine like terms because we have an 11 and a 9. But be careful because we have 2 equations there. We have negative 11 plus 9 over 4. Okay? And I also have negative 11 minus 9 over 4. All right, let's go ahead and clean these up. So we have, on the left side, we have negative 2 over 4, which I can reduce to x is going to equal negative 1/2. Okay? And over here, that's going to be negative 20 over 4, which we can reduce to negative 5. So my answers are x equals negative 1/2 and x equals negative 5. All right, let's look at another example. Okay, for this one, if you notice, they're all not on the same side. Okay, so we need to move them so it equals 0. So I'm going to have to actually subtract 3. So when I do that, I'm going to have 2x squared plus 2x. Now I'm going to have a minus 3 equals 0. Now we can find our a, our b, and our c. So the a for this one is 2. The b is going to be 2 as well. And my c is going to be a negative 3. Let's go ahead and find the discriminant now. So b squared minus 4ac. I'm going to write that down. So b squared is 2. So 2 squared minus 4 times my a, which is 2, times my c, which is negative 3. Okay. Now plug that directly into our calculator, and we're going to get 28. Well, okay. So now let's go ahead and plug that into the quadratic formula. Opposite of b, so -2 plus or minus the square root of 28 all over 2 times my a, which in this case is 2 again. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look. Let's kind of break this up. We have -2. Now if you look, square root of 28, we don't know what that is, but I can break that down. I can break that down into 7 and 4, and then 4 goes into 2 and 2. Okay, there's my pair. So I'm actually going to have 2 plus or minus 2 square root 7. All of that over 4. Okay. Now, for this one, it's a little bit different compared to the last one because I can't combine that like terms up top. I have a 2 and a 2 square root 7. Those don't combine. So the last thing you need to look to see if you can do is you have to look at all 3 of these parts right here and say, is there a number that goes into all 3 of those? Okay. When I look at it, I say, okay, the 2 goes into all those. Okay, so we're going to divide them all by that common term. So I'm going to have -1 plus or minus 1 square root 7 all over 2. Okay. The only time you can divide all those is when a number goes into all of them. And notice I didn't even care about this 7 inside. I just kind of took it along for the ride. So this is my answer right there. So technically it's 2 equations. I have -1 plus 1 square root 7 all over 2 and -1 minus 1 square root 7 all over 2. But we can write it shorthand with the plus or minus sign there. All right, that's our second example. Okay, guys, here's our next example. If you take a look, it's set equal to 0, so I don't have to move anything over. So I can go ahead and find my A, my B, and my C. Okay, remember, there's technically a 1 out there, so our A is going to be 1, our B is -8, and our C is 16. All right, now, so I'm going to go ahead and find the discriminant. So I'm going to have -8 squared minus 4 times 1 times 16. Okay. Plug it in exactly how you see it. Make sure that you have those parentheses there. Okay, and that's actually going to equal 0. Now, I have that, so let's use the quadratic formula. So I'm going to go ahead and do opposite of b. So not going to be a -8. It's actually going to be a +8 now. Plus or minus the square root of 0 all over 2 times 1. Now let's kind of clean this up a little bit. This is going to be 8 plus or minus 0, because the square root of 0 is just 0, all over 2. Okay. Now let's just think about this for a second. If I add 0, it's still going to be 8, and if I subtract 0, it's still going to be 8. So really this is just 8 all over 2. Okay. And we just simplify that. 8 divided by 2 is just 4. So x is going to equal 4. And that's it. That's all. Remember, we knew that if our discriminant is 0, we're going to have one real solution, which I did. It's just x equals 4. All right. Let's go to the last little thing. It's about your exit ticket. We'll take a look at that, and then it's off for the practice problem. Okay, guys, for your exit ticket, it just wants you to compare and contrast what types of solutions you got when your discriminant is a positive perfect square root opposed to when it's a positive non-perfect square root. So it's basically saying, look at examples 1 and 2 that we did, and what are some similarities that you noticed, and what are some differences. All right, go ahead and jot down what you see, and then go ahead and get started on your practice problems.